Hello, welcome to another edition of the Talking Basketball podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul. Hello.
Paul, we've got a guest.
Mark, we've got a fantastic guest today.
Does it get better than this, Paul?
It does not get better than this. Mark, you may not be aware of this, but today we are breaking UK podcast history because I do not believe, this is just, potentially, I do not believe a politician has ever gone on a UK basketball podcast, ever.
Never.
So this is groundbreaking what we're doing here.
Breaking new turf.
Absolute groundbreaking. So without any further ado whatsoever. And now, stand and cheer for your Liberal Democrat Portsmouth North candidate, Simon Dodd.
Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much. That is an incredible welcome. And thanks for having me, but that's amazing. Thank you.
Hey, if you get into the Houses of Parliament, that's kind of the intro you want as you walk in, right?
I think so. To be honest, if I win, with the count, I think we should have that afterwards. It's kind of
Exactly.
incredible.
In fact, going into the houses afterwards, you'll be like, you know what? This is just a step down from the intro I had before.
Brilliant. Well, look, again, like I said, this is definitely groundbreaking as far as UK basketball podcast is concerned. And there's just one thing I'm just going to address because I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be thinking it. Obviously, Simon Dodd is representing the Liberal Democrats. Just from we're probably as neutral as you're going to get. I have got no allegiance whatsoever. I do not know who I'm voting for. I don't know if I'm voting at the moment. So that's my status. And Mark, you're pretty much the same, aren't you?
Something like that, yeah.
And what I will say, because I know some of our listeners will ask, well, what about the other parties? All I'll say is they were invited to the conversation and Simon's here.
Yeah.
So Simon, we really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. And personally, it says a lot about you and the Liberal Democrats to me for making the effort to come on. So thank you very much.
No problem. Say thanks again. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. Great to talk basketball. And as I've said to you before, I'm not a basketball player, but it's brilliant to talk about it and brilliant to talk about sport generally, and which is a fantastic thing. And great what you're doing. And let's see what we can do to improve basketball provision generally.
Yeah, and look, it's one of the reasons we really wanted to get someone like yourself on the show was because we're always talking about basketball funding and how we can improve the sport around Portsmouth and in the UK. And again, it's like, well, people like yourself, people in the local councils, people in Parliament, they're the people with the power to help us do this. And it kind of feels like this might be the very start of, a conversation. Absolutely.
And I think you're right. There's two kind of areas for that funding. There's kind of local funding from the council as well for your local leisure centres, your local basketball courts. Then also the national level, there's funding for the sport generally through Sport England, turning that down to the different sports. And obviously Sport England's independent, but politicians can talk to Sport England, can make representations for those sports to say, hey, look, the funding, it might not be fair. Let's look at that again. Let's say, basketball's not funded fairly. Can we put some more funding into that? Because every extra pound of funding can help more people play basketball at the end of the day. And the more people playing basketball, that's taking up sport, feeling better for taking up sport, and also then the public health benefits of playing sport as well, which it means people are going to be healthier, they're going to be fitter, and then also less dependent on the health service later on as well. So it's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I've got a really easy question to start off with, and it sounds really simple, but this confuses me a little bit. Is why would you want to be MP? Why does anyone want to be MP? Because part of me looks at it like a bit like a traffic warden in a way, because you know what I mean by that. Or you get to get into the NBA. You're finally there. Oh, you're playing for the Charlotte Hornets. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's why would you want to be MP?
It's to make a difference. I think to make a difference for people locally, for individual constituents, you can help doing casework, but also to make a difference to promote Portsmouth on the national stage, and then to take part in that policy debate about the kind of key issues of the day, whether that's sport funding, whether it's funding for the NHS, whether it's funding for education, whether it's looking to see what we do about the mess that is Brexit, kind of making sure those relationships with the countries are good. So trying to make a difference in those debates and those policy debates going forward.
And how common is it? Because obviously Paul's mentioned about Portsmouth North, for example. We have a split constituency in Portsmouth as a city itself. It is split.
Yeah. There's one, within the city, there are two constituencies within the city, Portsmouth North and Portsmouth South.
And why is that? Just for me, just curiosity, just for the locality, because Portsmouth's the only island city in the UK. And it's got 208,000 in the populace. We're quite unique in many respects. So I was just curious why there's a split in them.
There's an aim to make constituencies roughly the same size, so that theoretically an MP should represent roughly the same amount of people as every other MP. So with the electoral system we have, you have constituencies that elect one MP, people vote for one person, and the person with the most votes will win. And the size of the constituencies, so there's 650 constituencies, each electing one MP across the whole of the UK. And the idea is that all of those constituencies should have about 73,000 electors. Now there's a little bit of flux, so a little bit above or below just to make them the right size. And there's a couple of exemptions like the Isle of Wight, because the Isle of Wight's too big to have just one, so that's now got two. But because of the kind of the solent, they had just two MPs for the Isle of Wight. And there's the islands in Scotland, the Outer Hebrides and Orkney and Shetland, they are smaller because they are kind of geographically away from other places. But every other constituency is roughly that same size. It's fluke in a way that actually Portsmouth, the two constituencies completely match the city boundaries. Because say you go down to Southampton has 2 and a bit constituencies. There's 2 constituencies completely within Southampton. I think Southampton Hest and Southampton Itchen. Then there's a third constituency which is partly Romsey and then partly Southampton North.
Wow.
So Portsmouth's kind of very rare to have 2 constituencies completely same as the city boundary.
Oh wow. Well, do you know what? Thank you for explaining that, because I've always wondered that, and that completely makes sense now, doesn't it? That you have so many of these, because when you see them and when we see elections and so forth, they come out of some of the craziest names, like for this constituency in this area, and you think, I wouldn't even know where that was. My geography's not bad, but that is just happens to be a...
This the election, they've redrawn a lot of the boundaries. So they redraw the boundaries about every 8 years. And they've redrew them last year. And this election is based on the new constituency boundaries. Obviously, the interesting thing compared to other countries, a lot of the countries have very different electoral systems. So you might have, you vote for a party, or you have multi-member constituencies, so it's just kind of more proportional. The downside with our system is, I say this as a Liberal Democrat because we like kind of fairness, but you can get elected on 27% of the vote if you've got 4 parties contesting that.
Okay.
So, but then other MPs might get elected on 60% of the vote. So it's a bit uneven with that. And that's how you can get a party winning 41% of the popular vote, but winning about 60% of the MPs.
Okay. And I suppose the challenge is from where we're coming from, which is what, getting Simon on here is all about, is trying to work, with people like Simon to improve basketball in the city. So I think that I would say, based on what you just said there, the challenge is getting Portsmouth North and Portsmouth South almost to work together.
Well, for example, you just said they've readdressed the boundaries. And
actually, Portsmouth hasn't changed though. Portsmouth boundaries are the same as they were. It's one of the few places in the country actually where there hasn't been a change.
But other ones in other areas, I wonder how much people in local areas, for example, are know that communication or understand. Oh, by the way, these are things have all slightly moved.
Well, I
and changed
guess when they get their I was going to say their pay slip, their voting slip, it will say you're now going somewhere else, aren't you?
Yeah.
Don't know. But
I mean,
would you even know that those sort of things and changes, and it's because
you
of
wouldn't necessarily know.
No, because obviously our government and our political system is based on something that is very well established, should we say, and some elements are maybe archaic in the modern world, for example.
Yeah.
So,
and actually, you're right on that. I mean, the electoral system and actually the whole political system is based on two parties. It goes back to the kind of centuries ago where you had the Whigs and the Tories, the two traditional divides. One kind of the Tories were the kind of crown party, and the Whigs were the kind of the other party, more of industry. But barely anyone could vote, only about 3 or 4% of the population could vote. But it was very adversarial, kind of one against the other, and that's why you have the House of Commons benches on one side facing the other. But look at most other countries in the world, and it's more of a kind of horseshoe style, where people are meant to work together more, and you have coalitions a lot more, and it's not adversarial, it's cooperative. But now we're looking at situations where we've got the Conservatives, we've got Labour, we've got the Liberal Democrats, we've got SNP, we've got Plaid Cymru, we've got the Greens, we've got Reform, we've got all the Northern Ireland parties. There's so many parties in there, but the adversarial one winner against the opposition still is the model and the way it's set up.
Mark, I couldn't help when someone was talking this. Something just popped in my head. Do you know, when if thought the Green Party, I can tell you who they'll be back in. They'll be back in cycling, won't they? As far as the sport, if you had to assign a sport to a party, they would be back in cycling.
Well, they will do about the carbon emissions, but then if they realise how much carbon's in the bike frames, they might change their mind. So, 6 of one and half the normal amount of rubber that they burn to actually make the tyres. But we're not going to go into that,
So, I mean, like, let's get to this where we were saying. So, one of the things, and it would be great to hear your view on this, is when we look at sports played in the UK, when we talk about team sports, basketball is the second highest played sport in the UK. Is that up to age 16 or 18? We're just talking school kids.
Yep.
That's obviously football, our national sport. That's going to be first, obviously. Yep. Basketball second for team sports.
Yes.
And now this is kind of our frustration when it comes to funding from the government.
Mm-hmm.
We're 13th on the list, and most
funding, it's fair to say most funding goes through Sport England. That's like the mechanism for it. In the same way, BAE is the prime for most defence things in the UK. Everything goes through that. In the same way it goes through Sport England. So they really take the pot in terms of where things are. They do a lot of development work and they do a lot of funding, and if you want to apply for things, that's the mechanism that the government usually uses. But
we're going to have to say the number one. So number one is cycling, which is why it popped in my head when Simon said Green Party. But then obviously you got football, netball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's dominantly a played by women.
It's a female-led sport. Yep.
I actually played it in primary school, just to point out that.
Well,
the reason for that, completely off topic. The reason was I went to a small village primary school and there weren't enough girls to make up the netball team, so I went in there as well.
Okay, well let me
sorry.
Let me reword that.
Most people.
Mostly played by women in the UK, but they're getting 21 million or over 21 million. Rugby 15 million. I'm assuming Lawn Tennis Association, we're talking Wimbledon, that's Wimbledon. 10 million. Hockey, gymnastics, and then when you get down to 13th, 8.5 million is where basketball is.
Yep.
And it's one of those things, we've talked about this with the current Great Britain coach, owners across the league, everyone who's come on our show, people who've been involved in British basketball, the BBL, BE is Basketball England, and everyone kind of says the same thing. It's like, we feel like the basketball is a significantly played sport, definitely in urban areas and stuff like that.
Urban areas, especially in different ethnicities across all those sort of boundaries. And sometimes in very, very low regeneration areas.
But the funding is 13th, and it's like, especially from a basketball background, you look at it and think, it's a bit odd, isn't it?
Now, obviously, we're not putting you on a spot saying where do you go with that money. That's a conversation with BE, and obviously we will have that conversation, and if they dare come on and speak to us. But at the same time, you can see
where we're coming from.
You can see, say, cycling. You see and you see things like equestrian and sailing, for example, have big budgets, but they also bring in lots of medals, and they bring in lots, and they are excellence in the world. They are viewed as world leaders. So you go, that makes sense. We understand that. Same as cycling, they've got the velodromes. There's big overheads, but there's big business that's attributed to it.
Yeah, and I guess you've mentioned an interesting point there, which is about the medals. And I guess this is a kind of the fundamental question: really, should funding be allocated based on success at Olympics and international events, or should funding be allocated based on participation? And you say there are some sports that have great overheads, building velodromes, buying all the kit for sailing. I guess it's this thing, do you want the funding so that the elite can win the medals, or do you want it so that millions of people can play it?
Yep.
And surely, there's something great about every 4 years watching the Olympics, seeing success, but it's kind of, surely the idea of sport is to get people playing and to get people enjoying it, and especially at the young age. And so, you've got to think conversations need to be had in a way with sporting and say, hang on a minute, I know you want the success, that's brilliant, but let's look at this another way. Let's try and fund things that will boost participation at the grassroots and get people going. And actually, then the more people you get playing at the grassroots, the problem is you're going to get more people that are really good coming through, which will then hopefully boost the medal prospects in 10 years' time anyway. But let's do this for the greater good in a way, not just the kind of few at the top. Let's try and fund this for everyone. That's my view. And if I'm elected, that'd be a conversation to have with Sports England and say, look, let's look at this model of funding, see if it is fair on everyone who wants to play these sports.
And you got to argue, and some of the sports, especially when you get to the Olympics, I mean, I've got a list of some of them here, which are higher than basketball, and it's just a little odd
in terms of the funding in particular.
In terms of the funding, so
and some of these fundings, just to put the perspective on it, we're talking about funding at levels where you have juniors that are then making prospective, international candidates that are then going on to, if you take like Anthony Joshua in boxing, for example, did very well, went through juniors, became an Olympian, and then went off to become a successful.
And that's what we should do, build the grassroots so that, the more people in there, by the kind of law of averages, you're going to get more people coming through, that are going to be good at that, and ideally, you get to the success you make. But surely, in my view, fund the grassroots that people are playing it.
And we've had the strong players come through. I mean, from Portsmouth. So you've got players like Adam Riabi, who's come through, and he played for Surrey Scorchers in the BBL, and now he's off. Was playing in, it was Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? Yeah. And then Faye and D, she was playing in Portsmouth, ended up playing Solent Kestrels. Now she plays for London Lions.
Just won a championship.
The BBL. And just won the European Cup with them. So there are examples of successful players from the area already that we look up to, I'd say.
Yeah, but a lot of those local players had to go play elsewhere because a lot of the investment in certainly this city wasn't there, so they had to go elsewhere.
They have to go to Southampton. That's where they have to go. They go to Solent Kestrels.
We don't want that, do we?
Because they've got a great Itchen College have got a great academy set that up there, and no one can really say that's anything other than a success. They've had so much success with that. But from a Portsmouth perspective, the draw goes over there with those big players, and that's what we want to do. Is hang on, we should try and do something, keep these players.
Absolutely, especially with a heritage that we had in basketball.
So Portsmouth, we were for 2 glorious years at the end of the 80s, we were the best team in the country.
Okay.
We pretty much
What
had
happened? Why did that stop?
Well, we did a whole podcast on it, Simon. You can hear all about
we'll
it.
listen to it.
We had basically you had Portsmouth Football Club. The owner at the time was John Deacon, and he owned Portsmouth Football Club and Portsmouth Football Club Basketball Club is what it was called.
Right.
And he had both franchises, and he basically ended up with the basketball team, which was the England team. He pretty much had the whole England team, and what became the whole England team.
Yeah, was the whole England team.
And I think it was their second season in Portsmouth. They won the BBL. Third season, won the BBL. Then the funding, he just was like, look, no one really knows why. I think it was like a lot of the football crowd were like, stop spending money on the basketball and put it into the football. And that's what happened. He cut the funding, got rid of the team. The team died overnight. It's basically the equivalent of me saying to you, football-wise, Manchester City suddenly ends and never exists overnight at the end of the season after winning the Premier League. That's kind of the equivalent of what happened.
Okay.
And because football is so big in the UK, obviously, go with that direction in that respect.
And dependent on one person funding it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like a lot of sports, it relies on the kindness of many and the money of few.
Yeah.
That's a great saying, Mark.
Do you like that?
That's a great saying.
Just went for that.
Yeah.
But there's
It
so
sounds
many.
like you'd written that down and rehearsed it already.
No, that's not me. That may be Paul, but that's not me. But it's honestly, you think of all the volunteers that are involved in all sports, and there's so much volunteering that's required to help with the day, for game day, or what's going on after, or everything behind the scenes. But the actual money usually comes from one or two main sources.
And I think what people don't realise, definitely if they're not involved in the sport, but I would say to all candidates, just look up what the Portsmouth Force is. So Portsmouth Force is a team that have just gone in the National League Division 3. So the National League Div 3, and the average attendance for that will be about anywhere between 10 and 20 normally. And there will be girlfriends and mums and dads usually. Yeah. So the Portsmouth Force now in their second season is averaging 450 fans to come and support that team. And that's equivalent of top of the table National League Div 1 representation that they're getting. So the support's there, and it's the people who are going are obviously new supporters to the game, but also all the fans from when Portsmouth won the league in the 80s, they're all now coming back. And I truly believe if we had the venue, you would be looking at least 1,000 coming to watch those games.
And more so. And the university that they play at, the university team, the Bucks, have been really successful in that, haven't they? And there's a whole feeder there, and there's a massive appetite for it around the city.
It's all part of the Portsmouth University, so it's going through that. But you get to, we're kind of capped about 500 people who could come in. So within 2 seasons now, we're almost at capacity for fire hazards and stuff like that. Yeah. So we're at the point very easily where we're turning people away. So we're half looking going, do we need to get another venue? But that is the biggest, that word venue is the biggest challenge anyone has when it comes to basketball. And that's just not Portsmouth, that's across the country.
Everyone. Would there be, I don't know, would there be any other suitable venues in Portsmouth where they could play?
The original venue was Mountbatten.
And say, could they play there?
So they would go in the middle court, two bleachers either side, seats down the baseline. That was the original venue. In the glory days, what they would do is the balcony that they would, in Melbourne, they got that curtain for the balcony. Yeah. They would have that open, and it would be at like 3 or 4 deep on the balcony of people watching the game. And that's where you were getting...
Good old 80s health and safety there. Everyone pile in, off we go.
That's where you had, and standing room, around the court where you couldn't get a seat. And that's where you have people like ourselves who remember that as kids and how magical that was, and now the Portsmouth Force is starting up again. It's like, wow, this is like feels really similar to what's happening. The team just got just go through the leagues, and you know, if the venue's there, then
venue's
happen.
the button. That's the number one button, and we hear it from every person that we've interviewed, people who have their own venue, literally up in Newcastle. They've built a stadium, you know, millions or whatever they've spent doing that, and the whole thing was that changed everything because it's a sustainable business. We can do things with that.
And you see that with other sports actually as well. You see that with, you know, I like cricket, but you see that when cricket, you know, county cricket clubs, they have their own ground, and not only do they have the cricket, then they can bring other things in there, other kind of third-party events, other hospitality events into that ground, which then generates that extra revenue stream to keep it going, especially off-season.
Exactly. And with cricket, I mean, cricket this year in the UK had, I think it was like 10 million as a big investment. And a lot of people flagged that up and went, why is cricket getting investment? And they said, when was cricket last? When did they get any investment through? And you go, oh, that's a good point. A lot of people have said, have you got a pitch? Yeah, off you go.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of heritage sports that have, I want to say, fallen by the wayside. But basketball, for some reason, never gets in the conversation with any of them. There's always there's something else being usurped. But for some reason, it just never makes it in the conversation. And it could be something like table tennis will be in there. And you think...
Table tennis is in there, Mark.
Yeah,
this is for the Olympics. I have got... Simon, do you play badminton by any chance?
I've played in the past. I haven't played for some time, but I have played in the past.
Excellent. Yeah. That's a good answer. So, I'm not a huge badminton fan. Most basketball players won't be badminton fans, and that's because you have the badminton lines going across the basketball court.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And so, it's purely an economics thing, because you can get fit 4 badminton courts on one basketball court. So for a gym, they might charge someone £50 to hire a whole court, or it's £15 per court for the badminton. So they sit there and go, okay, we can make the same money, but a basketball team isn't going to pay the same as, even though there's the same amount of players. So that's why people get...
Badminton for the Olympics, Marks, gets 3.2 million.
Yeah.
Basketball, 1.35 million.
Yeah, it's a bit unusual.
I'm presuming it's because basketball can only win a men's and a women's medal, whereas badminton can probably have singles, doubles, men's singles, women's singles, mixed double. It's kind of 5 potential medals.
You could argue the 3-on-3 now. Like we're Great Britain.
2022, Britain won the gold in the men's
3-on-3,
3-on-3, and silver in the women's 3-on-3. And that's something that's been introduced recently. And you go,
what our challenge is, and some may disagree with what I'm about to say. However, when it comes to basketball, we have to qualify for the Olympics in the hardest pool. So you go to Europe, and you've got
Greece,
teams.
Italy,
it's their
Spain.
national sport. It's their national sport. Serbia, Lithuania, Poland, world champions currently, Germany,
Spain,
France, Portugal, Italy,
Turkey. Yeah, it just lists goes on.
All these teams, that's who you're competing against to qualify. And there's not many spaces to qualify either. So that is the big challenge for like Mark Studel and the GB team. And that's...
So but again, also the other part of the coin is grassroots that you mentioned earlier. So when you have all these kids playing in school, there's over 1.18 million
canoeing
children.
is 13.7 million.
Those canoes aren't cheap, mate. They're not making them out of
water
anymore.
either.
They're not water.
Fencing is 1.6 million. I reckon there's probably only about 10 people fencing in the UK. So that's 1.6 million.
This is what is the interesting thing as part of the debate. So in Sport England, one of the things they say, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Not throwing it under the bus, but one of the things that they said, you mentioned it earlier about getting everyone on board and getting more people active and having more people in an inclusive environment. You go, that is fantastic. My only issue with that is they do that on the sake of saying we're elite sports, we're not as interested in unless we're already invested in. So we're not viewed in growing a sport to become elite. So if these are the elite sports at the moment, they've sort of taken a ring fence of saying these are the ones we're elite in, and the other ones are just as they are. And they even mention it on the funding pages, calling like a progress or world class. That's how they brand them. But if you have sports like fencing, where they're getting quite a lot of money. Now, I don't know many people who have fencing, and I grew up in a nice house, in a loved family, great friends, and a good education. So I feel very fortunate in that respect. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, a privileged background.
You're welcome.
But not you. You're an exception. But I didn't do fencing, and that wasn't something.
I think it was in our school, though.
It might have been.
I think it was. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, they
but
did Latin and some other stuff. But I'm just saying, some things, even though we're talking about getting everyone involved, that's fantastic. But when you've got the second most widely played team sport that is across lots of ethnicities, lots of different backgrounds, everyone plays it. Why are we not looking more at this than fencing?
Exactly. I guess
I'm not going to fencing.
I agree with you. You've got to look at this, and that's why I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. It's kind of, this is my view on this. You want to get more people active, and that's the kind of starting. That's the kind of impact. You want more people to be active. So let's kind of look at the sports where it's easiest to get people active as well. And in fencing, I dread to think what equipment you need and what facilities you need. But basketball, at the end of if you're just playing yourself for fun, all you need is a kind of a court there and a ball at the end of the day.
Sounds easy.
It sounds easy, exactly. And it's kind of, in a way, a bit of extra funding can probably go a lot further with basketball than it could do with fencing to get people active. And then you get all those other benefits. People start playing, they'll make friends, help with loneliness, start playing, become fitter, more active, help with public health, less health service. It's that starting point. It's kind of fund that a bit more, get those facilities going for the public to use, and hopefully give them facilities and they'll start playing more.
Well, you coach.
That's what I'd like to see.
Paul coaches you did literally yesterday, you were 5-6 hours coaching yesterday?
Yeah, 6 hours coaching from reception year all the way up to under 18s. Yeah.
And how many kids roughly are you talking about? In not just that you were coaching, but there in totality, just as an example.
Oh, hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Yeah, and in comparison to how many people would go fencing,
hundreds in the whole country.
Let's say ping pong or squash. Let's do squash as well. There's only 2 people doing that. How many squash courts are there?
Yeah.
So I'm not picking on just any old sports, just randomly, but it's a group thing. There's a lot of people doing it, and all of it stems around an arena. Now, we interviewed someone, Simon, in France.
Oh yeah, I know where you're going with this.
And I thought you'd find this interesting, because what they do is the councils and the local regions say, here's the sports facility, and the teams are the ones who manage it.
That's interesting. They provide the facilities.
Yeah.
And the teams don't.
Because everything else is on goodwill.
Yeah.
Because the teams look after things. The teams are the one who do all the schedules. So everyone has to book all of those things are taken care of. And it's the local provisioners say, well, this is the local sports hall, so of course you provide it. And obviously we are in a privatized country.
Well, privatized country with lower tax, but yeah.
If we have a basketball game tonight, let's say I might have to pay, if I can get it cheap, I'll do an average, maybe £60 for a court. Then,
an hour, or is that for an hour?
That'd be an hour as well, wouldn't it?
No, sorry, I was going for a cheap one. That's for £60 for 2 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, all right. If I was going for an average one over 2 hours, say £100. Yeah. Then I've got 2 referees. If they're local, amazing. If you don't get local, let's average that, say £25, £30 each. So have a basketball game, this is a local league basketball game. You're just short of, say, anywhere between £150, £160. We've played local league basketball games, and it's been like £200, where a ref might come from Winchester or something like that. And when you get to national league level, which you've got, you know, double that at least, maybe even triple it, to have a home game. So getting that home support is absolutely vital. But yeah, it's really interesting.
But all of that is
it's all to do with money in the UK.
It is, because the people who have come from different countries have come over and they've either coached or done some things and said, well, why does the UK funding, and it's always the word funding, isn't it, rather than just money, but why is the funding working this way? And it's because it's attached to the way in which government deploys funding, etc. like that.
You have a session, say £5, please, and they look at you like, you have to pay to because the way they consider
we're giving
it
our
is
time, we're doing all this.
Well, the way they look at it is, let's say we got a court for free and we were managing it. They look at that as, well, I'm not paying, but I'm representing Portsmouth. That's what you're doing. You're getting all my energy into that, and that's how they consider it in France. I'm representing Portsmouth. You know,
it's an honour. And they wear that, and then you have...
Sorry, that's what the council thinks. They represent Portsmouth. You don't need to pay.
And community is really important. Whereas that's maybe something that necessarily doesn't come across in certainly in basketball in that respect. So in our locality, I don't know about others, but a lot of them have to just take the onus on themselves, because it's... If a basketball court as an asset would be listed, it's often attributed to a school. So they'd say, oh, there's 28 facilities you can use in the area, but only 6 of them are available for paid use. Because most of them are schools, and you can't get anyone over the age of 18 would have no access because they're not letting them in the school.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the issue. Is the tax issue. It's kind of how the countries run. You look at other countries in continental Europe, and it's kind of the state's there to provide for the people in that way and kind of provide those facilities. Whereas here, it's not. It's keep the tax low, but that means you don't get the facilities. And it's that kind of that trade-off. You know, pay a bit more, but you have the facilities, and you don't need to pay any more with them, or keep your tax low and then pay for them. And that's the model that the UK's gone with, especially in recent years with, it's going to be political, but with the kind of Conservatives cutting councils' funding even more. So now councils just don't have the funding to do anything other than literally what they have to do, which is social care mainly. You know, all that discretionary spending, like culture, like sport, like libraries, has been cut because the budgets have been so tight and the budgets have been cut so much. So it's kind of reversing that mindset, allowed to give the councils more money to then promote, support, and the other cultural activities as well in those areas. But it's the reverse has been happening in the UK with cut. Nothing left for the councils to spend any money on.
But
it ends up the players are the one who has to fund.
It is
everything.
because
I'm not saying it's right at all. It's that's what's happened, and it's it's wrong on so many levels.
But business, culture, and sport are 3, I say, mainstays that you can often talk about, and you'll have cultural secretaries, etc., and people lead things. It's fair to say, certainly in the UK, for all of it, we have listeners internationally. In the UK, it's been a very interesting world that we've had, since post COVID and leaving Europe, etc. We've had some, economic challenges over the last few years, and wouldn't things like sport and investing in people going to not only watch sport but participate and get involved? Sure, and it's a year when there's the Olympics on. You've got sporting things with the UK, like the British teams as well, for other sports. You would think that they'd be pushing for something like that, which would raise people's spirits. A lot of people get behind football. I watch football. I don't like football, but I'll watch the game of football and get behind the team. It gives you a sense of pride in the country. I'm always very surprised that you don't see that in.
You don't see that, and I think that's
until it's useful, of course.
Until it's useful. I think the kind of the mindset of politicians is to cut taxes, And that's why they think that people want to pay less tax. And so as a result, it's kind of spending less. And this is generally what you see with the Conservatives and obviously Labour kind of offering the same kind of thing. It's kind of, let's keep taxes low so that people don't have to pay as much in tax. But what's the payoff with that? It means that the country has less money to spend on facilities. And in a way, it's kind of doing things differently. It's kind of saying, actually, yeah, let's have a little bit more tax in the right way, whether that's, from equalising capital gains tax, so that kind of, people who are earning, who are making money on unearned wealth, they pay a little bit more in tax. But then we put that into the grassroots facilities. We put that into facilities so people can play more sport as well. And also, I think the other thing is, it's short-term decision making is always the case in the UK. It's kind of, this year we need to cut, and that means we'll cut some money here. But rather forgetting about the fact that actually, let's take the sport and health analogy. Let's say, okay, well, this year we need to cut funding, so we're going to cut sport funding. But forgetting the fact that in 20 years' time, the people that have had the sport funding cut now means they become less active, which means they need the health service more 20 years' time. But that's not the case, because by that point, we know the government in power. So the government at the moment is cutting the tax, isn't bothered about 20 years' time. So I think we need to, as well, think long-term with things more. I'm thinking, actually, this isn't spending money, call this investment. This is investing in sport and facilities for people now, which will give us benefits, pay for the sport, the enjoyment of the sport, but those wider societal benefits as well, which means in 20 years' time, we will be spending less money on health service provision. But that, I kind of like the sound of that, but that's not what's happening at the moment. I mean, if that makes sense.
Can I just say one thing? I was kind of giggling to myself a little bit when Simon said something, because I thought of the other part of this. It's when you said Conservatives, and I thought Rishi Sunak and it was Labour and
Sheriff of Nottingham.
Who was it who didn't have Sky TV? I can't remember who it was.
Oh, Rishi Sunak.
Rishi Sunak. That's right. So when you mentioned Conservative, I thought Sky TV. And there's a little bit as well, which is...
It's the Sheriff of Nottingham, isn't he?
It's a little bit as well where it's like, Sky as well.
Yep.
They will put on darts, sports I couldn't even tell you the name of them. All the sports, and then again, it's the same thing. You look at the second highest played team sport in the UK is basketball. You don't see it on. Well, you'll see it on YouTube, but it's rarely on. It's rarely on. You'll get it on. Is it Arena? Is it? Put it on Sky Sports.
Use a quick analogy on that as well when you're talking about Sky.
Yeah.
But I think back, I don't know if you ever watched.
You're not going to say you didn't have Sky TV as a little kid, are you?
No, I didn't have Sky TV. That's not what I'm talking about, actually. I want to talk about back in 2005 when England won the Ashes.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Channel 4, and millions of people watched that series. I remember, I was a trainee solicitor in London, first year working, and we all kind of left the office the final day of that final Test match to go and watch it on Sky. Not on Sky, on Channel 4 in the kind of bars down the road. But millions of people watched it. 4 years later, the next Ashes series, it was on Sky. Less than 1 million people watching it.
Yep.
And it's kind of, yes, Sky brought the money in, but it lost that kind of place, that exposure to everyone. And football has that exposure, but other sports don't have that exposure. And in a way, it's kind of, we need to have these sports more on free-to-view TV, so that Rishi Sunak, when he was a kid, could watch it. But more seriously, other people can watch it as well who don't have Sky TV, which is millions of people. And he might just kind of come across a basketball game and think, that's really cool.
Yep.
Let's go and play. Just like in 2005, loads of people went and played cricket after that, but it didn't happen in 2009. The same can happen here as well. It's kind of, this in a way is kind of not taking money in the same way. We're not going for Sky TV contracts. We're going for, let's get it on free to view. This is about exposure. We want people to see this game, so that then they will go and play it even more.
Absolutely. I mean, the same thing happened with F1, didn't it? Where it was always on the BBC, and then suddenly went to Sky, and everyone just I mean, I've been watching that since I was a kid. Dropped straight off that. No interest.
Not sure that everyone can go and drive an F1 car afterwards, but
I drive like I've got an F1 car, but not drive one.
yeah.
Not sure you should admit that, Mark.
Listen, I didn't say I was doing a speed. I said I was driving it. I'll just make the noises in my head. That's all. But I mean, it's very interesting that you say about looking at prospective things and things that work for now and things for, so, we've been talking about it, how people try and get funding and what the challenges that people have in the UK with sport. But if we say bring it just to our city, for example, because this is where we live and we love, and as an example, again, I'm not putting you on the spot, but as an example, there's one facility, Wimbledon Park, and one facility, Eastney Swimming Pool.
Oh, so when we were like 4 or 5, Wimbledon Park was where we used to train with legend Mickey Byrne.
Yeah. And
actually, and Andy Rowland, he used to do it as well, didn't he? He used to train
and
us.
they used to go between Mountbatten and Wimbledon Park because of costings and clashes, etc. And then, obviously, COVID has just changed the game for everyone globally. It just changed everything. And there were a lot of people who found fitness during COVID, it's fair to say. I know a few people who were...
I did.
Yeah, for real?
Yeah. Running. I'd taken up running a few years before, but kind of just doing a mile or two at a time and, kind of going out 2 times a week, then 3 times a week when I was working at home. But then COVID hit and I was going out 6 times a week running and started off, I was doing about 2 miles a time at that point. I'm now going out doing 8-10 miles 5 times a week.
We'll be checking on your Strava to make sure.
I'll show you. It's 10.5 miles this morning.
Simon was going straight to the app then, like, look, I'll prove it. You know he's a runner if he's going to the app and going, look, there you go, there's my 15 miles I did today.
Not just running for candidacy, he's running around the whole place.
Mark, I know where you're going with this, and I think it's... Oh, there you go. Yeah, morning run.
Wow.
Oh, that is a big morning run. Jeez.
Was that against the wind?
Well, it's both ways. So one way is with the wind and one way is against the wind. That's what makes it amazing.
I hated doing the seafront because you go one way and you think, oh, this is great. Then you turn around and you think, I could get flown backwards by the wind.
That's a nice run, that is.
Yeah, nice part of the world.
Mark, I know where you're going with it, and it's a great...
Sorry, completely distracted on the Strava there.
It's a great point. However, I just want to ask one question because this is a lame question, I'll tell you now, Simon. It is lame as you're ever going to hear. But it's kind of the foundation of everything that we're talking about. So I'll say it really simply in the sense of who's in charge? Like, you got the Prime Minister, you got Rishi Sunak, you've got all these MPs who are elected into government or the other parties, whatever. But the party in, they've got all their bits. We've got like a sporting MP for whatever. Okay.
Yep.
But then you've got the local councils who have also been elected in. So who's in charge? Like in Portsmouth, like who's like if there's an issue, like let's talk about the bloody traffic. Every road is closed all at the same time. Like, who's responsible? Is that the Prime Minister? Is that the MPs? Is that local council? Who's in charge?
Well, the UK is actually very centralised. It's one of the most centralised countries in the world, where the national government has so much power, and there's not many countries where the national government has quite as much power as it does in the UK. So you look at other countries, say in Europe, say take Germany, take Belgium. You've got the federal government, then you've got regional governments, then you've got local governments, and actually say Belgium, that the national government has very little power at all. It just kind of defends foreign policy and sets a budget, which is why Belgium can manage 2 years without a federal government, because the federal government doesn't do very much. In the UK, it's the other way around. The national government, take out Scotland and Wales, let's look at just England because of the devolution, but the national government does pretty much everything. You have your local council, and actually your local council is different in some areas. So in Portsmouth, we have a unitary authority for the city, but then you go to Fareham, to Gosport, to Havant, and they have 2 councils. They've got the borough council, which is Gosport or Fareham or Havant, and then they have the county council, which is Hampshire. And the 2 do different things. When it's in Portsmouth, we just have one council which does it all. So it's getting complicated there. And then some places also then have mayors and they have mayors for a city, or they might have mayors for a larger Greater Manchester area or West Yorkshire area. But ours are with Westminster, with the national government, and the funding for councils. Okay, so councils can raise money through council tax, but that's only a minority of their funding is through council tax. Most of it's coming from the grant from national government, which is set every year and will change every year. And then also they get that money, and it's kind of, well, actually there's certain things they have to do. Social care being biggest one in terms of money. So the council has to look after people, whether that's young people in care or whether it's old people who need social care, or other adults that need social care, and that takes up the vast majority of the funding. And there's other things that they've got to look after: the roads, collect the bins, education, library. Then you've got the cultural, sporting things, the very discretionary things like your libraries, like your sport, like your theatre, like your plants, and the in Portsmouth, the seafront and all the parks. But that's about 1% of the council's budget. 1 or 2%, because the vast majority of it are on these things that the government says you have to do this. You can't not do it. You have to do that, and we're only going to give you a certain amount of money, and we're cutting that grant every year. So less and less money has been coming in. That's why you've had councils having to scale back what they're doing. We're lucky here. We still have weekly bin collections, for example, but a lot of places they can do fortnightly because it's cheaper. You've seen a lot of councils in the country shutting libraries, or the plants, for example. That's council money, because there's just not the money. And we're lucky here that actually the council has managed things in a better way. Southampton's in dire straits. Birmingham's going bust. Nottingham has gone bust. We're in a better position here. It's not still very tight, but it's much better. And let's come home, but it's bad to say, it's a Liberal Democrat run council here, who've been very sensible with the money, spending what they have to spend, but kind of not overstretching. And we're also lucky that we own the port. That's actually a council-owned port here, which, as a result, the profits from that port come to the council to provide services for us.
Yeah.
But so who's in charge? Mostly Westminster. The council's there. People elect the council, but the council really has control over a few percent of what it does, because all that social care work, all of that, the bin collection, that all needs to be done.
Okay.
So as a result, there's only a little bit of money left to do what they want.
To create our basketball arena.
Yeah, so the 12,000 seater in an arena, you're thinking is not coming from the council.
Not anytime soon.
Rishi's probably got it in his pocket.
Oh,
there you go.
Down the sofa, isn't it?
There you go.
Yeah.
But those things, I mean, that's obviously then why when you look at Sport England, they'll have all of these, I want to say funding projects, but everything is a project that's a type, because then that'll be, I want to say, essentially a CapEx from the government, where they'll say individual cases will look at that sort of way.
Yes. Now go back to your thing, because that ties in perfectly.
And that's the government controlling it as well. They're kind of saying every year you'll have to apply for that again, apply for it again, not for 5 or 10 years at a time, but every year you have to do that.
So if you will humour me, I'll paint the picture for those who are not familiar with Portsmouth or the area. This is a perfect example. So we have an ageing building called Wimbledon Park, which is made of steel structure, quite old, I think from the 50s, around that time, and it's just like rotting, and it just is what it is, but it's an old building. You also have Eastney Swimming Pool, which is a very, very old Victorian bath, 20-metre pool, quite short, super deep as well. Like when we were a kid going in there.
That's Victorian, is it?
Yeah, you couldn't touch the floor. And it was hilarious. Like you go,
you're
going to have swimming lessons there, and you go,
they just push you in. There you go, swimming lesson.
Yeah, like
learn to swim, sink or swim.
But it had a deep end, which was cool, because you just go and dive and get bricks and stuff. So
the whole thing was the deep end thing, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. So those things, they had what are we going to do? And it decided in and around COVID and around that time, we need to rejuvenate it. So everything was closed at COVID World, and they went, we're not going to open them. All right, fine. And there's a lot of places around the world, well, not in our country certainly, they did that. Took the opportunity to say, cut the head off the snake. We just won't open them again. But we need a new facility in Portsmouth where we're going to go swimming. There's only one main one at the moment, and that was up in Portsmouth North, which is in Mountbatten Centre. They also had Charterhouse, which is school. You can go there as well. So the decision was made they were going to do it in a local park, and they were going to do Bransbury Park, and they're going to take, I think they called it wet sports and dry sports and combine them, which I thought was hilarious. It's like, you really got to look at your name phrasing there, because that's just not an ideal thing. And they're going to put it in a park. And then the budget originally was going to be something like 3.5 million to renovate these two. But if we build something, it would be 10 million. And the reason we'll do that is because it will get 2 million from Sport England, because they'll back it, because it's a great idea. And then as plans get drawn up, they start losing facilities. So Paul will hate this, but on the Portsmouth Badminton Club, they're actually historically associated with Wimbledon Park, because Portsmouth was apparently where the first ever badminton club was formed in the UK. And they wrote a rule book. Didn't know that. But they're going to lose 4 or 5 courts when Wimbledon Park closes. Where are they going to be? Well, they can't be at the university, and that was the first excuse that was given to them. But they said, well, we've already got a university because we've got a new university building. So the ones we lost with the old university have been replaced. But we're losing an additional. And the court that was going to be at the park, they're now not making an indoor court. So there's no indoor courts at all. And they used the argument that because there's only 2 courts they were going to make, there's no point making them at all, so we just do without. And now the budget this year has gone up from a 10 million guesstimate to 22 million. And when you look at that and you think, so we're going to lose assets, you're actually losing functionality for going from 2-3 basketball courts on that same site, by the way, which are outdoor courts that need rejuvenating, going to 1. And the netball courts that were supposed to be there are now going up to Mountbatten Centre. But they haven't been put into pitch yet, which now Sport England are now complaining, saying, hang on a minute, you're taking away assets and we are funding based on netball, and we do well in netball internationally, so we want to fund those. And they're going up to this thing, but you've got to put a proposal in. So it all seems to be around, we've got to propose for funds, we've got to ask for funds, we've got to go through a hoop, we've got to jump through. It's a really archaic system. But all the figures are based on pre-COVID numbers of people playing sports. Yep. And they don't exist. Some of these numbers literally don't exist. So you think, how can people get things so wrong? Is my question to you, really.
I think this comes down to the centralising nature of the country and the government. Everything is so centralised, and you have to justify to the nth degree everything you're asking for. And so you've got, it's justifying. You talk about trying to justify the number of people who use this, the number of people that will play it, and this is why it's not saying, okay, it's not being sensible by saying, okay, here's some money, here's a pot of money, you're local, do with that what you want. And that's the way I think it should be, and that's the way the Liberal Democrats think it should be. It's kind of devolve. You're trusting people to make decisions locally. Say, here you are, go and do it. But the nature of government in this country is the central government, the national government, doesn't trust local councils, local politicians to do that. So it was going to say, you've got to apply for this money, and we might grant it to you, but have all these conditions attached to it. And actually, you might then end up not having enough money anyway to do it.
But sending a survey...
That needs to be changed.
But sending surveys to find out these numbers, you're sending a survey to my mum. It's like, oh, she's 74. Are you going to play basketball? It's like, I've never seen a survey in my life from the government saying, what sport do I play? And you think, why is my mum getting a survey saying, what sports? Are you going to use the new sports centre? I highly doubt it.
That's why cycling is so high.
Well, yeah. So it's like, where's the contact points for these numbers and things? And that's where, without any disrespect, that's where a lot of people get the distrust, because it's a case of no one's asked the opinion of the people, it seems, and yet ironically it's the people who represent the people make the decisions, and we think, why is there such a disconnect? And we're just talking about sport here, and we're just talking about basketball, but we see it with that in a UK level, so not just Portsmouth, but a UK level, there's a disconnect between, there's a lot of people playing it, there's loads of kids playing it, and they fall off. And the reason they fall off is because the facility, once you're out of school, there's no facilities. If you're not in school, you've got to pay for it. And you're not doing it in gym classes. But all of the kids love it. And you go, well, why are we not looking at, suddenly there's just a gap here where it goes from 1.1 million players to like 350,000? Why is that?
And that's fundamental. That's what we've got to look at. I think that's what we've got to look at with all this. It's kind of get people playing when they're young, but then make sure they can keep playing if they want to. I want to just talk about kind of getting people, people still playing basketball. I'm just going to go off on a little tangent if you don't mind. But I was in New York earlier in the year for work. But it's kind of, one evening walking to a work thing, and it's kind of just walked past these public basketball courts just in Manhattan, and it was kind of absolutely packed, absolutely brilliant. It's kind of, I would love to see that here. It's kind of, on a block, I can't remember anywhere, 3 or 4 of them at least, but just everyone happy, all ages as well, kind of from youngsters, teenagers to people older than me, let's put it that way, playing and having a good time. And that's what it's all about, in a way. That's what it should all be about. It's allowing people that space to enjoy themselves doing this. And for basketball and do it for other sports as well. But I just thought, why can't we do that? You should ask the question, it's not me, but it's kind of, we should be able to facilitate that, to allow that to happen. And I know, obviously, talking about the leisure centres in Portsmouth, I know kind of, just the public outside courts, we do have some of those, and I know I had a very quick chat with the leader of the council before I came on, and he said, there are plans now, I think, to renovate courts up at Mountbatten Centre as well. Those plans are being developed outside courts up there. So it's great that we can do things, but if we just see that funding, the local council just doesn't have the money to do it. And in a way, it's the national government needs to allow the local council the funding, but also then the freedom to spend the money where it thinks it should be necessary. And that's what I'd like to see.
Does it go to the people who make the most noise?
Oh,
Partly, yeah. I think probably partly does. I mean, if you've got somebody banging down your door saying, give me this money, and they've been doing it for 10 weeks, you might just want to go for the quiet life.
Yeah.
Mark, I was going to say, look, that's what I was just trying to say to, without anyone hearing on the mic, but I was basically saying, look, we got, last time you told me was a few weeks ago, but 67,000 listens a month. Yeah. That's shouting quite loudly, I think.
Yeah, it's shouting very loudly, because that's the thing. It's a case of if there's an appetite for it. And do you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see us do something where we not only make a difference, but it opens up a channel of communication that we could then explain to other regions and other people, hey, this is how you talk to government officials. This is how you get that access. And break down that barrier, because it seems that, for example, you've just said there might be some investment going up there. We're one of the UK's biggest basketball channels. This is local in our city. Paul's heavily involved with the current team. Why don't we know about that? Why has no one spoken to any of us? Why would we not hear about that? Because surely if someone's saying, we might renovate basketball, why don't you speak to people who are doing that? And yet that hasn't happened that I'm aware of.
And I think that's exactly, and it's kind of the more decisions are taken kind of in secrecy almost at times.
Yeah.
And it's sadly, it's kind of who you know to ask in a way. And I just kind of happened to ask this question, is there any word on new or improved courts? And said, we're supporting a proposal to bring forward a complete refurbishment of one near the Mountbatten Centre. I just happened to ask that question.
Must be,
I don't know where.
An outdoor court. It'll be an outdoor court, I think.
I think it is. I think it is an outdoor court. I think it will be.
Well, there is going to be one in Baffins, apparently.
In a new build.
And that was relating to a budget that was put out because the Olympics, and the councillor said, I think the tennis court and the basketball court are getting completely renovated. But I would have thought, and it's just random, but you would think the people in the basketball clubs or the people in the local area
would be involved in that.
Well, so
Or be aware.
Because Project Swish is something that was trying to work with Sport England, and they did Orchard Park just down off of one of the main roads.
Yeah, Orchard, just between Goldsmith and Orchard Road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and look, you got to, I mean, I'll bring up Craig Hughes' name now.
Craig was massive.
He was a big part of that. But you had, with respect, an area which not much was happening to it. It was unloved. Yeah, that's a nicer way of saying it. I drive past that area now, and I might look over there and see 30 kids playing in the summer playing basketball, and it's like, that is exactly what you were talking about, Simon, when you were in New York. And
that's what we want. That's what we want.
And they have it at Clapham Common up in London, and those like big courts out there, and they're doing, and they have big tournaments on their 3-on-3 tournaments. We've had a few people on there who've talked about these big 3-on-3s, and it's becoming that 3-on-3 on its own is becoming a bigger sport anyway because of our Olympic success. But what's just fascinating is you think with an outdoor court, you've got the space there already. All you've got to do is just build it and people use it. But
just from my perspective, and this is just through all the experience that I've had, you've had, talking to all the people. So you've got venues like up in Newcastle, obviously. What's that called? The Virtu Arena. You've got in Nottingham, the Wildcat Arena. They're not huge venues. When you actually see them from the outside, they're not huge venues. It's not like huge towers or anything like that. But you can fit 3 basketball courts on. All of a sudden, your entire community has a facility which is being used every single day, all year round.
Now we're going to get an interview.
And Portsmouth is in that place now. We're at a point where we're like, we are crying out for a basketball venue. At the moment, we've got deals with the university, Portsmouth College, Admiral Lord Nelson. We've got all these deals just so all the kids that we're coaching can have somewhere to play. I mean, Portsmouth's got National League Div 3, Under 18 National League 16, 14, Under National League 12. Then you've got the fun and fundamental setups. And these guys train at all of these different venues all year round. But we need our own arena. And it's something, we joke about, if I win the Euros, don't worry, I got it. I'll build it. But it's like, we are now, like Mark and I are seriously talking, like, what can actually we seriously do to try and get a Portsmouth basketball arena?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there has been, just as a caveat, is this doesn't mean like a big new building.
I know you said 12,000. I'm not talking 12,000. I'm talking a building that can have 3 basketball courts on. Because what they do, like they do up in Newcastle and Leicester and all those places, they just the 2 courts. You have the one in the middle, and for the big games, they put bleachers down for the 2 courts on either side, and that's where you get 1,000 people suddenly turn up. Or in Newcastle, what is it, 3,000 get in there?
Yeah, exactly.
And it literally is 3 basketball courts next to each other.
So these sort of things, what we find it's funny is, I don't want to say looking into the cost, but one of the things we looked into was there was a place in London who redid it, and it was in like Lewisham, I believe, around that area. Steve Bucknell got involved, and they got some other things involved. There are some other bits associated to that, but one of the things was that it was connecting it with a funding program. And they basically got some old warehouses, and I mean I can show you the picture like roughly just so you can see it. But
that's cool.
Oh wow!
The idea is that they actually got some warehouses and went, well, the big industry's moving out of Lewisham because obviously the cost of that compared to somewhere else. What could we do with it? And because urbanized sport, that's the sort of arena they need those facilities. So you look at somewhere like Portsmouth and you think, well, there are a lot of warehouses around here. Is that something that we could do where we can get bleachers and you can rent things, and there could be something that's sustainable even for
That's the key word, sustainability.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing we've heard from everyone is that if you can get it where there's revenues and there's people coming back, and then you create that business around it, then more funding will come to expand that business, because then you're getting people in jobs, you're getting people around it.
Yep.
And we'd love to see that, and it's like if there's a way that we could do it with a blueprint, and we could understand how can we open that channel of communication and funding, because it's not just about the money. And I think Paul would be the first to agree with that. It's about understanding how you can get everyone involved and raise that profile. Just saying, well, you all your kids play basketball. I know so many people with kids who have basketball nets in their gardens and stuff, and it's like, why don't you come to the basketball? I didn't know it was there. Didn't know it's
And what people don't realise, like, we were a big deal. Portsmouth were a big deal in the basketball world. And, a lot of us who remember those days, we look at it like we're a sleeping giant.
Yep.
And by getting 450 people to a home game when the average attendance for the rest of the league across the entire country is like 10 or 20, says something about the thirst for
the appetite.
I mean, Simon, come down to when the season starts in October. Come down and you'll see it for yourself, and you go, oh well, something's happened. You'll feel it. Not many people go to a basketball game and go, I'm never going to another one again. That's what I'd say.
It sounds cool, and I think you're right. It's having the conversations and knowing who to talk to then start those conversations about opening up funding avenues. And if I'm successful, I'd love to have those conversations, see what I can do to help you with that. Even if I don't, then let's see if I can put you in touch with people anyway who can help with that within the city. It might be kind of, if you didn't know about this refurbishment of the court, it might be that I can put you in touch with the right people in the council who might not even know you're there, and just have that introduction and start talking about seeing what can happen in the city. I think this is trying to open the doors to let things happen. And funding might not be from that place, but they might know where the funding is available from. And let's see what can be done. It's a great opportunity to do it. And I brought up Portsmouth Force on my other screen next to me. It's kind of, it's amazing, kind of, as you're saying, to see that 2 years in already, kind of up to that 450, way more than anyone else in that comparable position. You can just see the potential there within the city, and it's not just Portsmouth, it's other places as well. Let's see what we can do. And it's kind of the grassroots, and then also helping the kind of more, the clubs grow as well, so people can just play on their own or can go and join those clubs. So go and watch those clubs play, and they might go and take the kids, and they start playing as well. So it's just all the kind of knock-on effects to get people more active and enjoying themselves.
You wouldn't believe how many emails I get a week. Like, can my kid play basketball? Can I join a local league team? What's the latest? I mean, obviously the best team in Portsmouth is the Portsmouth Fury for local league, but you wouldn't believe how many emails I get constantly, all the time. It's exhausting. I just forward it now. I just forward it to someone else. But
how high does all sport? If you are looking in politics and you're having these discussions, does sport ever come up? Because a lot of the time, you're talking about social care, you're talking about housing, their use and cost of living. That's pretty much going to dominate everything on the planet these days, which is fair enough. But surely, if you're talking about health and you're having conversations about people's happiness, not just from playing sport, but from enjoying and watching sport and having facilities. And, we've had the America's Cup in Portsmouth. We've been lucky enough to have that. It's a worldwide event. Where does sport actually weigh in a political standpoint? Because, do the two mix?
I think you're right in saying that the big issues are obviously NHS, education, social care, tax. But you're right, especially when you go into health, it's important as that kind of public health side of it. But also, kind of quite sad. I've got the manifesto right on my desk here next to me, and there is a chapter on culture, media, and sport, which is, I don't think, kind of it's crucial that it is there. It's a kind of, there is a plan to do things, and one of those things is boosting participation in sports and physical activity by investing in leisure centres, swimming pools, and other grassroots facilities, and supporting community support clubs. And that's one of the things we want to do. So, yeah, the kind of the big issues kind of over there, but this is there as well. There are thought has gone into this, and it's important. It's important to get people active, to get people engaged in communities, to keep them, kind of stop loneliness. But it's also just important to live. You've got to enjoy. It's not just about surviving, it's about living as well. And that's where sport really comes into it. That's where you can get enjoyment. Not everyone does, but this is allowing people to get that enjoyment, that thirst for life from something like this. So is it a big ticket political issue when you're talking to people on the doorstep? No. But that doesn't mean it's not important. I think it is important, and it's about that giving people that enjoyment and that happiness again, and that is where sport and other cultural things, other cultural issues as well, that's where it's very important.
I mean,
so yeah, that's that line I just kind of thought, it's crucial, and that's kind of in a way the bottom of what the ultimate what I'm trying to say with what I'd like to do. In a way, that line sums it up. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that sounded good. That actually sounded really great as well. I couldn't help think it would sound even better if it had the word basketball arena on it as well.
It would.
We go, yes, you got my vote.
Yeah, 100%. Get the vote. Basketball arena, done, sold.
It's implied. It's implied there.
Well, I mean, I had only two questions on that, and firstly, I appreciate that. That was a great. That really helped us sort of frame it. But when you have these are our manifestos. So in the UK, obviously, this is how we operate in terms of politically.
Yeah.
But then, say you get in, all goes right, everyone's voting yellow, and job done. What happens between that's our manifesto and right, day one, we're in
day one
number
basketball
10,
arena.
Let's
go.
Is it day 10? You go, give us a call, and you go, talking basketball. Let's get that arena underway. What is that trajectory? If you are successful and you get to place, how long between I've got a manifesto to I can actually action or do anything? Because you don't go in and say, right, we'll unplug all of these things and plug in some new things.
Did you just call the Houses of Parliament the place?
Wow, you've got it, haven't you?
When you get into the place, I think you talk about Downing Street, actually. So when I get there,
Absolutely.
These things don't happen overnight. This is it's a plan for a few years, and there will be some things that are urgent and need doing straight away, and there are also some things that are easy to do, so you can do straight away, and there are other things which you just take longer to plan. And I think one of those questions about the kind of urgency, it's one of those things about how long does it take to do it, is whether also you need to pass new laws to do something, or you can just do it within the existing laws. And actually, probably investing in sports facilities is probably something that's easier to do, in the sense you can probably do it within the current framework. That's not to say it might not be urgent, in the sense that it might not be kind of training 8,000 GPs. So, but it's something you can do fairly easily. And it's something that you can probably, a lot of it is in kind of, sorting out that funding and talking to the right people to free up funding and free up ideas and get things kickstarted. So, in a way, ideally, you'd start in those conversations pretty soon, and then start the planning pretty soon.
That's why you're on the show.
I don't know. I wouldn't like to put a kind of complete figure on it, but it's, if I was there and if I was in that place, I'd love to be having a conversation pretty soon with you about how we can get things kickstarted here. Because we'd be in an ideal position.
We'll pop a note in a diary, Simon. That's fine.
Simon,
No
on that
problem
note, this is just a personal question that just popped in my mind when you were speaking. Then, what would it mean to you if you became an MP?
It'd be an honour, to be honest, to do it. because it's kind of representing people be trusting you to represent them in Parliament or that place. So I think that'd be kind of a great honour to do it, and a great responsibility to do it as well.
It must be like for the MPs who get in there, that first time they walk in and they get to sit in the green seats, that must be special. I don't think, I could be wrong here, but I don't think you're allowed to sit in those green seats unless you're an MP. Or maybe I'm getting it mixed up with the House of Lords. I know they're quite strict.
I don't think you are. I remember going on a school trip years ago, and we went through the chamber, and it's kind of, you're not allowed to sit down.
Yeah.
Yep. I had the same thing. Couldn't sit down in them.
Oh, so it is a real thing. I know that was
from
somewhere. Yeah. But that must be special. Imagine sitting in one of the green chairs and just going, or it's in a seat, bench seats, whatever. Sitting there going, "Wow, I'm now here." That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
I did try. I touched it.
You touched it.
Yeah.
Doesn't count. You got to sit on it.
But if you are, in the position, for example.
Yeah.
I guess you're then going to have challenges just with, these are things that are going on currently that we need to urgently deal with. And these are things that are already underway. Can you just we need to halt that, or we need to pull a plug on that, or we're just talking about sports, so generally here we need to reassess how we communicate sports to, sports shouldn't be top down, sports should be led by the people rather than just a top down exercise, so to speak. How do you, is there a mechanism for that, or do you just all say, I think we need to relook at this, and then suddenly it's all change?
I think the latter. I think you kind of say, okay, we need to really look at this and kind of work out the best way to do that. I don't know if there is a mechanism to do it. I think it'd be kind of just trying to work out how to do it. And I think there's kind of, it comes down to the two things as well. That's looking at the national stuff. There's things you could probably do locally by, setting up, making those contacts, setting those meetings, which would be fairly easy to do. But I think the kind of bigger structural changes, there isn't a blueprint, there isn't a kind of a plan for that. It'd be a mechanism. That would be something you just start doing and say, let's look at this.
I guess the question really comes down to how do you, it sounds as if it's something that people from any sport where they're passionate about it but feel that the spotlight needs to be raised, like you mentioned with cricket, for example. It's something that there's an element of having to educate the governments and the local authorities and saying, hey, do you realise not only is there an appetite for this, but we're missing these things, and these are almost the steps that we need to do, because Paul was talking about, this is an arena. This is what it could bring. These are the sort of things that it would provide. These are the amount of people you would touch doing that. These are the amount of kids involved, adults involved, jobs involved. This is how it'll raise this area. But is it sometimes about educating people because they don't really understand that?
Yes, because I didn't know until I came, an hour and a half ago. I didn't know that in the same level. And it's about educating people, and it's kind of, and it doesn't necessarily take long to do that, but it's having the opportunity to do it.
Do you think governments are open to that, listening though? Honestly, we appreciate that you're here.
Yeah.
We cannot take anything away from that. But just as a genuine, it's easy for us to speak, but we can not only be heard, but is it okay? Great, thanks for turning up. And now we got
I guess in recent years, the indication would be no, they're not. If I'm elected, I'd like to change that, because ultimately you're representing people. And I think there's two, some politicians consider themselves the representative of Parliament in their area, whereas the other way of looking at it is you are a representative of your area in Parliament. And in a way, I'd like to be the latter, so kind of representing, you listening to your ideas and taking those to Parliament, rather than saying, right, this is what Parliament's saying, this is what Parliament's done, I'm telling you what it is. So I think you're right. And I think there's been a fundamental disconnect in a way between government not listening to people, and that has to change. And it's probably not going to happen overnight with a massive revolution, because that's not how this country's ever worked. But certainly in my view, and I'm probably the same for other Liberal Democrats, we would welcome those conversations and listening to people, because by listening to people, you can do your best work in doing the things that really affects and change people's lives for the better.
Simon, you talked about education. I can also educate you and all MP candidates on one thing that really irritates basketball people, which is when they're trying to do planning permission on something, having imposed badminton lines get put on the court. They really do that. I'm speaking for all people in the UK that try to build arenas, and the plans come through and they go, yes, it's all accepted. You just need a badminton court on that one court over there. And they're like,
yeah, always, and horrific colour schemes. That just, yeah.
If I could promise you an arena, but you had to have the badminton courts, would you take that over an arena at all?
Yeah, we'll take it.
Wow.
We'll get
I can do that overnight, but it's kind of.
We'll get the special tape, Mark, and put it over the badminton lines.
So you can get tape that you tape over the lines, and it makes it the same colour as the wood courts. There's a couple of people who've done that.
Nice.
So yeah, the condition would be that you'd have to fund the tape. So other than that, it would be fine.
Well, Mark, come on, you got your questions.
Yeah.
Every guest has.
Every guest, Simon, is.
I'm getting my answers ready for this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
We queued you up that these were going to be these questions.
You did. You queued me up on these ones.
I try to queue up all guests. It's just that if I forget, well, I feel like I'm stitching them up on the night. I don't forget many.
I will say the people
I'm very pleased you queued me up on this as well.
But the people we've stitched up have really had taxing times. So I think it is fair that we do it this way.
But some great answers.
So the first person that you'd pick, the one person that you'd pick to have that, I want to say the glory shot, the clutch shot, who would it be?
Okay, so on this, as I'm not a basketball fan, I thought I would take assistance. First of all, I messaged a friend of mine in the US.
Ooh.
And their answer was, there's a big LeBron James or Michael Jordan controversy at the top. So, okay, interesting. Still doesn't give me an answer. So then I thought, I'll tell you what, I've never used ChatGPT. Let's try it. So I'm going to read these back to you and see what you think. So I said, this question into ChatGPT, who would be the best basketball player to shoot to win a game? And ChatGPT said, selecting the best player often comes down to a combination of their overall skill, clutch performance under pressure, and track record in similar situations. Historically, a few players stand out, and they are Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Larry Bird, and Kevin Durant.
There you go.
Wow.
Is
that what? That's brilliant. I haven't put that in.
I tell you could have heard a pin drop in the studio then where it was like chat and the answers. From
who
chat,
is
people
it?
were like, what's it gonna say?
So Michael Jordan, Kobe, always up the top. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's a pretty good list.
Is that going to be your five and pine as well?
No. I put this as a separate question in as well. Then so
fantastic.
So ask me question number 2, and
so question number 2 is your top 5 players and one on the bench.
Okay, so I said, who are the all-time top 5 basketball players? And they said, it's ChatGPT said this is subjective and often debated. However, based on their impact, achievement, and overall skill, the following players are commonly regarded as the greatest in basketball history.
Wow.
Number 1, Michael Jordan.
MJ.
Number 2, LeBron James. Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 4, Magic Johnson. Number 5, Larry Bird.
Wow.
And then I forgot to ask for the kind of the plus one. So then it said honourable mentions. So anyway, it's one out of these 5: Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Bill Russell, or Kobe Bryant.
There you go. All the greats, the top 10.
That is, yeah. Wow. I mean,
so that's
kudos to you for using ChatGPT because no one's done that yet. And actually,
that
is a really strong list.
It was Shaq, Kobe.
Yeah.
Who are the last 5? Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq,
Kobe, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Bill Russell, and Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
There we go. Simon,
Amazing.
you're in our list.
You're in the list.
You're in the list.
And that's a strong list as well.
That's a very strong list.
That's a very strong list.
I mean, normally the heart comes into it
Yeah.
because it's like people go, right, I'm going to go with my team and pick certain players. But, you know.
See, I was going to make a joke and say you're a politician, so you're heartless, but I didn't. And, you know, I've got to say that when Paul said, you know, we're going to get someone in politics on the show, my initial reaction wasn't great, I think it's fair to say, because I've always wanted to keep things like politics and religion out of our conversations, mainly because it's always very personal for people.
Yeah.
So
It is.
and you know, we like to keep this light and airy, and we try not to be judgmental, although we are often. We're all human. But I personally, I've got to say, you know, it's a great idea from Paul to have you on, and I personally massively appreciate you giving us our time, because, you know, that wouldn't have been easy for you coming into this.
No. I say for me, thank you very much. It's been great. I've had a really good time. I didn't know what to expect at all, and it's been great. So thank you, and actually lots to think about as well. If I could say one thing as well, just vote. Whoever you vote for, just vote, and that's taking part is the key thing.
How many people don't vote? Just
It's quite a lot.
Yeah,
It's quite a lot.
At general elections, it's probably 70% of people vote, and it's been dropping. Actually, it's probably even less than that. Now it's probably 65 or so. Local elections, only about 30% of people vote.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I like it because I get to go into I get to go to Moran's Way. So I get to go into the old primary school that we went to, and you go in like, it smells the same. It's just
Is it
the same.
smaller? Does it look really small? Because I remember it being massive.
I just think I'm a bit bigger these days, but yeah, it's just, you go in there and you think, wow, it's the same smell.
So Mark's Portsmouth South, I'm Portsmouth North.
excellent.
So
Excellent.
Well, Simon, look, you know, you've got, you know, everyone listening now, what's your spiel to tell everyone?
But I'd say the first main thing is please vote. Generally, and genuinely, please do vote. You know, obviously, I'm a Liberal Democrat. It's what I believe in. I'm standing in this because I believe in this. You know, I believe in fairness. I believe in a fair deal for everyone. And you know, from a sport point of view, that includes, you know, we do have this commitment in the manifesto to invest in community and grassroots facilities, which I genuinely think is a really good idea. From the reasons I've said, you know, kind of invest in those facilities, give people the opportunities, the possibilities to play basketball, sport generally, and that can mean so many benefits. And that's where I am. You know, and for this election, you know, it's a change election. You know, in a way, it's time. I'd say it's time for change, and hopefully, I'm not a heartless politician. Hopefully, I do have a heart, you know, and willing to listen to people really. And so, yeah, please just take your time to think, have a look at what we're offering. You know, we can offer a fair deal for everyone, really. But you know, look at other parts. You know, make your choices, see where you live as well. The situation's different in different places, but above all, please vote. That's a kind of very soft message, I know, but
Yeah, no,
please,
that's fine.
just vote.
That's fine. Yeah, you're taking on the sword bearer. If I was her, I'd be carrying that bloody sword everywhere, like bloody William Wallace on my back.
Yeah.
Like, imagine like opening ceremony stuff. That would make it interesting. Like, whoosh. Wouldn't it?
It does mean if you get in, you've got to get a bigger sword. You've got to get one made. Like, that's 100% what I'd do.
You
Be
could
like,
turn up dressed
get
as
a
William Wallace or something with a big sword.
Claymore, kind of, yeah.
I'll tell you what, instead of a sword, I'll carry a basketball around.
There you go. We'll send you one of these little basketballs.
Absolutely.
Well, look, Simon, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And yeah, like Mark said, thank you very much. And like Mark, we have broken history today.
We have broken history today.
With what we've done.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Simon. It's really appreciated.
No, thank you.
You know,
Thanks very much for the invitation and listening to me.
our pleasure. And, you know, obviously go vote. Whoever you're picking, whatever you're picking, go read everything and check out your local constituency because they're all different. Thank you so much for your time, Simon. I have been Mark.
I have been Paul, and we've been listening and talking to the Liberal Democrat Portsmouth North candidate, Simon Dodd.